Hello and welcome. Our journey we're doing over these few weeks in the company of the poetry of Catherine Charnley, we're coming very much towards the threshold of Lent. By the time this is broadcast on YouTube and other media, we'll be less than a week away from Lent. And we are very much purposed and heading in that direction. Now, in these days of lockdown, obviously many of us are trying to be out and about safely and responsibly whenever we can. Obviously locally and in relatively short bursts. But we're nonetheless eager to be out in God's creation, to see signs of hope, early signs of spring, and to journey where we can in a place of consolation and awareness. If it's anything like where we are, places are much more crowded than they used to be. They're certainly a lot muddier than they used to be. But perhaps we also have memories of perhaps coastal trips quite recently or long ago to the western coast, Cornwall, Devon, perhaps West Wales, where this is a common sight, a tree that looks a bit like this. And that tree is a weathered tree, a tree that's been reshaped by the circumstances around it, that's been altered, that has taken the shape of the forces that are acting upon it, but is nonetheless very much a tree, and nonetheless able to shelter and bless the sheep, in this case, that have been sitting below it. It is rooted and growing, it is shaped, and it is weathered. Our poem speaks today of faith not being an escape route. Consolation in some ways, yes, but escape, no. Now, we often dream, don't we? And the world we live in is saturated with the idea that if only I do this, then that will happen. And yet our life experience tends to point the other way. Yes, sometimes it does. But a lot of the time, what we plan to do doesn't quite end as we want it to be. And we are weathered, we are, if you like, toughened by the experience. Have a look at this little clip from the film The Graduate, very popular film in the 1960s. There's Dustin Hoffman there at the back on the balcony of the church. Thank goodness he doesn't come to Westbury Park. It would disrupt more services in more ways than we could imagine. But there he is, and he's trying to claim his loved one from a wedding to another man. And you can see Anne Bancroft there forward right, looking a little teed off. And it's magical, isn't it? He gets the girl gets him, everything's tickety-boot, but it doesn't. That's escapism. It doesn't work out like that a lot of the time. And our characters are built up through that. Notice how strong these hands are. They're strong because they have been weathered. The calluses have been built up because of the weathering. And through that, they are able to work, to shape in turn, to heal, to mend, to fix, to make, and of course, to reach out. Notice how strong the skin is. It's the calluses that enable the work. And it's now that we reach a rather difficult passage from Romans 4, but it's an important passage and it engages with the short poem that we'll be hearing. And not only that, but let us boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. It sounds like the Apostle Paul is seeking suffering. He's not. He's just acknowledging it and somehow urging us, if we can, to speak as God's grace allows, and only as God's grace allows, of the way it has in the past and might now be, just shaping us, weathering us, making us into a place of shelter that is different, making us into a place where we in turn can be used to shape healing in others, to stand stronger alongside others. And all because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, which is one of the great promises, that the Holy Spirit is God living within us as counselor, guide, and friend. It's a passage full of the deepest hope in the love of Christ that endures. Because even in the most weathering situation, there can be great beauty. The poem. Lord, yours is not an escape route, a running away from life. It is the hard, dull weathering out of what is, a strengthening of skin to meet the sharp, dry grit of our days. Apologies there earlier in the moment of absent-mindedness to say the passage was from Romans 4, it's of course from Romans 5. So if we're weathered, if our skin feels calloused, if character and hope are starting to build in us through all this, if Lent is on the verge of coming upon us, yet in the distance, even when calloused, even when toughened, even, dare I say it, when wrinkled, the feast is still in sight.